All right, today we're talking fuel systems again. Had a bunch of people on Instagram reach out to me on what I run for my fuel system. I'll make this quick. So, a lot of people are surprised that I'm not running a racing fuel cell, and mostly the reason is fab work, money with racing cells, fuel cells. You got to get them inspected every couple years. It just seemed like a lot of work. Eventually, when I do more tubular chassis stuff and tie in the rear frame rails to the cage, maybe I'll gut all this out and eventually do a cell. But until then, this is what I run. So a couple years ago, I put a brand new OEM fuel tank in the car. Got it off late model resto, I think, for like 110 bucks. When I found out the bowl that sits under the fuel pickup broke off and was sloshing around. I had fuel starvation issues at NJMP Lightning in 2019. Ran the pushrod motor lean, dropped the valve, and that's kind of this making, the decision making point of going Coyote after blowing a fully built brand new 306 pushrod motor. So I dropped the tank, put a new OEM gas tank. It has a Walbro 255 in-tank pump with a Pro M fuel hanger, and I'll put the link to the video I did on that a couple years ago explaining why I run the Pro M hanger. There's a bunch of different benefits. It's got AN fittings on it. It's all -6. The feed and the return are the same diameter tube. It prevents aeration. There's a lot of benefits. I'll put the link in the description on this video so you can check that out. So OEM tank, Pro M fuel hanger, Walbro 255. Now that's the basic Mustang setup. This is where I took it a little bit further. So my Walbro in tank feeds a Fuel Lab fuel filter. The fuel goes through that into this 2-liter surge tank. I have a Bosch 044 pump in here. This surge tank gets filled with fuel. The outgoing line goes into, believe it or not, it's a Corvette pressure regulator. I'll put all the parts and the links in the description so you guys can source that. All these stainless steel braided lines, it's all PTFE. It's all from Hot Rod Fuel Hose. Right over here is their logo. Again, I'll put all the links up. This is all -6. All PTFE braided, SS braided lines. So it goes from the Corvette fuel pressure regulator out to the motor, and I'll explain that in a second. And then I have a return coming out of the surge tank going back into the OEM tank. Now, the reason for all of this is, as we know, the Fox body chassis is a return style fuel system. You have a feed going to the rail, you have a return from the rail back to the tank. That's fine for a Fox body. The Coyote motor is a return-less system. So the way I did my return, it's all in the trunk. So I only have one -6 feed line going into the rail, which feeds the motor. And the return line, like I said, is from the surge tank to the OEM tank. This was the cheapest, easiest way to do a fuel system for my Coyote swap. There are companies out there that make Coyote swap fuel kits, and it was very expensive. They were running two like Walbro 340 pumps. It was good for 1200 horsepower. It was just way too much for my application. This motor makes 400. It'll make a little more this year, but I didn't need a huge fuel system for some crazy big build. I'm never gonna make ridiculous horsepower, so -6 was was plenty for me. I did sketch this out on paper. My good friend Dylan helped me through a lot of the ideas and how to do it, and again, this kind of just boiled down to the simplest, cheapest setup. The surge tank I got on eBay, I think for like 60 bucks. It came with a knockoff 044 pump, which I never ended up using. I ended up finding the Bosch pump on a Corvette website for like, I think $250. I got it all written down. Like I said, I'll put all the information in the description here. But I had to buy a bunch of different fittings from Hot Rod Fuel Hose. I probably spent $300 on fittings and lines, maybe 400. Fuel Labs filter, my good friend Jesse recommended. He loves Fuel Labs products. He loves their company. So I went with I forgot the micron and the measurement and the whatnot, but it was all -6 in and out, easy stuff. It's all AN fittings. The Corvette pressure regulator also has its own fuel filter built in, so I know one of them's a larger micron, one's of a smaller micron, and obviously the Walbro fuel pump has that fuel sock, so that's going to filter some of the big stuff in the tank if there is any sediment or debris. But it was a very this for me is kind of the easiest setup. 2 pumps, 2 tanks. I kept all the fuel stuff here so I can cover it, and then I got you power and grounds, and then I ran it to a switch. Fuel pump 1, which is the Walbro, fuel pump 2, which is the Bosch, and then ignition, and the car fires right up. I like doing that because I can keep the fuel pumps off, spin the starter motor, let the oil kind of circulate the motor a little bit and prime the motor. Now that I'm going to be running an AccuSump, once I open the AccuSump, the motor is going to be oiled up and wet and ready to go. So that's a nice little maintenance thing. Trying to think of what else I could say. I run basic 93 octane. The Bosch, I'm pretty sure. You know what? Don't even quote me on this. I was going to say I think I can run E85 with the Bosch pump. The Walbro, I don't think so. I'd have to change that. These Gen 2 Coyote motors are flex fuel, so you can use E85. I really haven't gone down that road. I kind of want to keep things simple. Been running just basic 93. And I honestly can probably go down. I got a 255 liter per hour pump, in-tank pump. I can probably go down because I don't need, that 255 pump is, on most Mustangs, is good for, let's say, 500 horsepower all motor. I don't need, since that pump isn't feeding the engine anymore, I can probably go down. It's probably making a ton of aeration in this little surge tank. So I'll have to, really look into that, and maybe I'll drop it down to like a 190 or something. I don't know. I don't want the Bosch pump out feeding the Walbro because then I'll be right back down to having fuel starvation issues. But the reason I went with this over the cell is I'll never have fuel starvation issues going around corners again. As you start to run stickier and wider tires, you get more lateral G's going around a corner, and that's when your stock tank, the fuel starts to slush away from the pickup, and the pickup obviously in these cars is on the passenger side. So lightning, the last turn, the big bowl, let's say I'm pulling a G around that corner, it's a long right-hander corner, so all that fuel is slushing over to the driver's side, which that's exactly where I was having lean AFR issues. So this setup, there's always fuel in this 2-liter tank. So the fuel in the gas tank can slush around, all it wants, but there's always fuel here, which is feeding the motor. So this was just, it made the most sense on, the in-between of, what do I do? Do I put baffles in the stock gas tank? Do I order some fancy aftermarket tank? I know some people will put 03, 04 Cobra gas tanks in these cars. They are baffled better. Ford decided to kind of beef up and upgrade the Cobra OEM fuel tanks. The only issue with the Cobra tanks is it is a center. The sending unit and the fuel pump is in the center. So I would have to, I have an access panel here for my sending unit, and I have an access panel there for the fuel pump if I need to do maintenance or, work on it or whatever. So with the Cobra tank, I'd have to do, that would be kind of useless. I'd have to change my access panel for that. And also the OEM tank in these cars, there's a slip ring that holds the fuel pump into the tank. With the Cobra, it's like a bolt-on system, so it's a little different. Again, I didn't really want to add another, can of worms into the mix. I already bought the OEM tank off a late model. It was like $110, so I just kind of didn't want to reinvent the wheel. But this is my fuel system. Feed and returns all back here, since I only have one feed line going to the motor. I guess a lot of guys will do a feed and return, and then you got to run more fuel lines. This just seemed like the simplest, easiest way, like I said, cheapest way. I probably got all the numbers and the costs written down somewhere, but it wasn't too bad. It was nice to reutilize the wall roll pump that I've been using for quite some time. Yeah, pretty simple stuff. Like I said, it's all -6. It's probably good. I don't know, probably good for 600 horsepower. I'm not exactly sure the liter, flow rate on the Bosch pump, but I knew, I did all my research and I knew this would be plenty for my application. So that's my fuel system. Pretty simple stuff.